Hello and welcome to Daily Politics on Trust TV. On this program, we discuss issues around politics, policy and governance. I am Shafiu Suleiman. The Managing Director of the Financial Derivatives Company Limited, Bismarck Rewani, has said that the Naira is currently overvalued by 200%. Rewani, who stated this during a program on Arise TV, said the black market, where Naira exchanged for 680 to a dollar, provided a true picture of the value of the Nigerian currency, adding that the Naira-dollar exchange rate at the official market did not reflect the current realities in the country. He then demanded for the devaluation of the investors and exporters, that is I&E foreign exchange window rate, next month to help the Naira find its true value. In a swift reaction, another renowned economist, Tokwe Pasua, disagrees with Mr. Rewani's submission, saying it is one of those neoliberal economic policies that will further jeopardize Nigeria's economic interests and hurt the Naira. According to him, Rewani's position is merely academic, random and unfounded. It is on this backdrop that we will be forming the conversation today. We are joined by Dr. Tokwe Pasua, who joins us from the United Kingdom. Thank you for joining us. We are also joined by Mr. Shuaibu Idris Mikati, also an economist who joins us all the way from Lagos. Thank you for joining us. Finally, we also have Abdurrahman Hamisu, who is a researcher and a political economist at the University of Abuja. Thank you for joining us. Okay, before we commence discussion, we'll take a short break. Stay with us. Let me start all the way from London, talking about joining Mr. Tokwe Pasua, who actually had asked to grind with the submissions made by Rewani concerning the devaluation of the Naira. Let me give you the opportunity to tell us why exactly did you agree with that submission that the Naira has been overvalued?
It was equally random. I couldn't see any nearly scientific basis for such a statement, and I think that we should be extremely careful. I've been doing that for a long while, especially as it relates to the Nigerian Naira. We have to be extremely careful. Whatever we say becomes the reality. As a matter of fact, in my international finance class and in my master's degree very many years ago, we were taught what they call three generations of currency ways in a currency crisis. The first one is that a nation must be careful how you make statements in terms of whether you're going to fix your currency and defend your currency. Moved against the British pounds in 1992 based on that statement alone. The second one is that they told us what is called the self and notable people like Mr. Rewani saying that the currency is overvalued and will be devalued. Surely the currency will lose value. And one is what happened in the Asian crisis when you borrow short-term funds for long-term investment. So, and I thought that Mr. was also or is one of the advisors to the President on economics, and therefore his statement is quite weighty. In fact, in making that statement alone, it's as if he has moved against the Nigerian Naira. And you could expect that people will listen to him and take a position as well, Nigerian Naira. And this is really unnecessary. I think that the Nigerian Naira, when we, am I being heard?
Right, very well. Go ahead. Yes, we're waiting for you to drop that point, yes.
That the value of the Nigerian Naira, if we would do things rightly, should be determined by the international trade of Nigeria. That should be the central bank. International trade, whether in terms of import and export, how much are we getting in? How much of imports are we bringing? I mean, how much of exports are we taking out? what's the value and all of that, and how much of imports are we bringing in? And even the imports will include importing when we send our children out there to go and study for health purposes, valid. But
Okay.
other extraneous externalities, for example, like just people just making statements, people in financial markets taking position against the Naira, speculators, arbitrageurs, and those who attack the currency should not be something that this country should frown on. And this
Okay.
is even beyond what the CBN alone can handle. The president of Nigeria should understand that this is his remit. And I keep on quoting again, you know, the statement by Margaret Thatcher, which she echoed Joseph Stalin, that to destroy it, the first thing you do is to destroy its currency, to debauch currency. The Naira is Nigeria. The day we lose that Naira, we lose this country. We have to be very, very careful. A nation's currency is very, very central. And I felt Rwanda should never have made such a statement, much less saying that the next month, it's not within its remit to say that next month the Naira should be devalued. And,
Okay.
CBN should also sit up to ensure that it does its own work properly so that external parties like this should not be making such statements. In fact, there's a certain movie series which they made on the Nigerian Naira. It's called, you know, there's a certain title to the bubbles or something like that.
Okay.
Series 5, it's episode 5. And it was based on the Nigerian Naira that a certain Nigerian central bank governor, fictional, gave a hint to somebody that they would devalue the Naira. And these guys, they gathered together, took position, and made $5 billion off Nigeria. Okay, so we should be very, very careful the kind of statements we make. And this country is ours to say.
Okay. Shabu Idris, you've had Tokwe Paswa, you know, justifying the reason why he's against those proponents of the Naira devaluation based on what they term, you know, it is overvaluing. This is not the first time Nigeria is devaluing its currency. You know, it started long ago, since 1986, after the adoption of the neoliberal policies during the structural adjustment and what have you. And then subsequently, Nigeria has devalued its currency to meet, you know, its obligations, or rather suit the economic situation at those points. What is your take with regards to those calling for the further devaluation of the Naira and the current trajectory in terms of the global exchange rate and how Nigeria is faring?
Thank you very much. I think I will secondly explain my thought with Dr. Tope Pastua, you know, the position he has espoused, you know, against the statement by our dear senior professional colleague, Mr. Bismarck Rewani. Number one, I think the statement was, to my mind, is most unfortunate and ill-timed, and it shouldn't have come a personality, particularly given his role as a member of the Presidential Economic Advisory Committee. Such shouldn't have come from him. However, be that as it may, the fact remains the gap between the so-called official exchange 420, 430 to a dollar to, you know, the exchange rate in the black market of 680, 600. We even went to as high as 720. This gap explained too wide, and clearly there is some level of valuation of the Naira. When I align my thoughts to the fact that the valuation or the overvaluation of the Naira is excess of 200%, the answer, I don't think the Naira is excessively overvalued. Yes, maybe 420 is not the best rate, but certainly 680 Naira is also not a realistic rate. We've all got to be careful in making some and juxtaposing position. How if you take an aggregation of the foreign currency in Nigeria, just for one example, let's say we trade on the average, say $1 billion every month. What is the proportion of that $1 billion trading that is done in the the parallel market? US is as mine, but the last estimate we had, less than 20% of the actual dollar being traded in Nigeria monthly. Now 10, 15, or 20% of a population assume the mantra of being the domino effect or the domino factor in the population. I would have thought if you were to put all these members of this population into a basket, if you dip your hands, what is the probability that you will pick among 80% or among the 20%? This is the kind of analogy that I think anybody trying to align his or her thoughts based on what is happening in the black market should be careful. Needless to go to the next level of our conversation as to why even the question of devaluation. What is happening?
Yes, that's the next point of call, actually. Because I'm going to put this to Abdurrahman Hamisu. Considering these two positions, Pasua is actually talking about, non-reliability, if you like, of the proponents, if you like, or the yardstick, used to measure the overvaluation of the Naira. And Shaibu Idris also talking about the imperatives, looking at the current dynamics. Do we get the fundamentals? Are we getting the fundamentals right for us to be even talk about devaluation? Because we know that devaluation comes with certain deficit, if you like, and then the idea is for us to look at where we are in terms of import, export, and not talk about whether we are productive. It is obvious that the economy is import dependent. Again, we are a consuming nation, so to speak. We're not that productive to be able to cope with this challenge. Let me get your view, looking at all of these positions.
Thank you very much for your question. I think let me start by underscoring a point that in terms of the economics of getting the value of any currency right, is an endless experiment and this that will not now. This. Most countries usually are concerned about when and what they spend. Anchor program, as an example, this is something that has really contributed into the national coffers in terms of diversification of the economy, but it has not yielded that particular envisaged output to labor of our people, which means when Nigerians produce and they're supposed to earn, say, 800, they ended up less than that, because when you devalue the currency, it is good that it will chip in the products that are available within the economy. But again, the impact, the devaluation itself on the life capacity of the people to really earn, to really the multiply effect economy will create the desired impact that we want to see will not be available.
Okay, let me get Mr. Paswa to also agree, or actually, analyze this aspect of the conversation. For instance, we have a challenge, the fact that sustaining also the official, if you like, devaluation, in a way that the CBN will continue to intervene, injecting money to support the Naira is not realistic and it is not tenable, for instance. And the idea is actually to allow the Naira to find its real value, just like Mr. Rewani has mentioned. Don't you think, at this point in time, there is no option than to go this way?
There are several ways of managing a country's currency. But I believe that the best way for us is what it's called a managed floating system. A managed floating system, because you cannot entirely float your currency for a country like ours. If you float this currency to float into, all you have to do is to look at what are the demands on the currency. Okay, I mean, banking sector. I worked in banking, international banking, international operations, and I never saw one single import form made in the Naira. I never saw one single export form made in the Naira. Dollar remains the dominant currency all over the world. And when you get to that level, the level where dollar, yen, pounds, and co and yuan are is a very bloody sport. And that's what Abdurrahman just said now. Dr. Abdurrahman, that look, when China wanted to divide, the US said, look, we're going to take you to the cleaners. You don't mess around at that level. Easily come to African countries, developing countries, and make all these recommendations. And through their representatives in Nigeria, continue to push those kind of recommendations. It's very unfair. So you will realize that since 1986 or so, under Ibrahim Babangida, that we started devaluing Naira, we have not stopped devaluing the Naira. So the one-way, one-way track down. And I must tell you something. The more we devalue the Naira, the more we devalue the lives of the people of the country. Therefore, those who could afford milk, who could afford sugar, who could have stopped affording me because the devaluation, as we are devaluing, of course, it was a direct impact on inflation, on the price of food, especially the foods that we have to import. We're still an import-dependent economy. Now, the two things, if you want to devalue, okay, if you want to devalue, you must be ready to close in your economy. But under Ibrahim Babangida, we devalued and then we opened our economy to importation. It was disastrous by every means. It was absolutely disastrous. Okay, and this is where we have found ourselves. So we have to be very careful. What are we? So now, the dollar demands we have, of course, the legitimate for importation, and equipment and so on, but and also for schooling, but we have demand to corruption. A lot of dollar is demanded for the purpose of corruption. Nobody sends a bribe for Naira, and that is an unofficial transaction. So long as those demands are there, there will continue to be unnecessary pressure on the Naira. So we need to go after the finance.
Right. Okay.
And that's a very critical thing that ties into this issue of dollar rate and all of that. Okay. If we can do that, we'll then begin to see what the real Naira rate is supposed to be.
Okay, Mr. Shabu Idris, you've had the concerns raised by these two gentlemen. Really, they are looking at who will benefit actually if we are devaluing the Naira, and how it's going to impact on the life of average Nigerians. They are also looking at the indices, talking about the level of unemployment, for instance, the inflation, two-digit inflation. We are moving gradually to 20% and so on and so forth. Looking at the environment, and of course, those that might likely benefit from this and how it's going to affect the lives of ordinary citizens. Would you still, suggest that is the only way to go, looking at our current crisis in terms of the exchange rate?
I think if all of them will agree with me, there are a number of rationale for reasons why a country's currency will be said to be overvalued. Fundamentally, you categorize from maybe one or two angles. If you reduce basic economics, demand and supply. If demand outstrips supply, and conversely, there is a supply side effect, there is shortage of supply. If demand has not increased, but the existing supply is reduced, price will increase. Now, juxtapose this simple economic theory with where we are today. This is a country that has been producing an average of 2.2 million barrels of crude oil per day. We went down to about 750, maybe 800. Today, we are producing about 1.2, 1.3 million barrels per day. This is our main of exchange. Now, reduced or has it increased? The answer is yes, demand has increased, meanwhile supply, reduced. Now, what that means is there is need for some level of price adjustment so that an equilibrium level can be aimed to be reached at. And number two, following closely to that is, in addition to demand and supply, there are other either indigenous or exogenous factors. Meaning happening within the ecosystem, within an environment. For example, within the Nigerian economy. Dr. Tokwe has, touched about that. The level of insecurity, of corruption, whenever our nairas are stolen, those who have access to the stealing, what do they do with the naira? They change it into dollars. So there is an artificial demand for the dollar, not necessarily for productive, means of for productive sector of the economy. Needless to add what he said about the banditry, the kidnapping, this Kaduna about Puja train that was attacked, close to 2 billion naira, we understand has been paid as some of these. But, those nairas went where? They went into the, foreign exchange market. To worsen the situation, the central bank is also not helping matters. What do I mean? The intervention, the so-called intervention by central bank, Anchor Borrower Scheme, no intervention in aviation sector, intervention in text, greater proportion went to what we call political farmers, political so-called manufacturers, political so-called airline industry. So the monies was not actually directed into the actual product sector of the economy. Where will that money go? It fuels inflation. And by fueling inflation, it's an devaluation of the currency. We check that West means account of the central bank is in the region of 12 trillion naira. Now, whoever buys a balloon and then inflate that balloon with air, he or she will certainly know that that balloon will soon burst if you will put a lot of air into it. Now, when the central bank pumps so much naira into the system, two things will definitely happen. One, rising inflation. Two, devaluation. Now, you take a gun, you shoot yourself, and say it is painful. I mean, why should anybody come to your rescue? So we have to juxtapose some of these of our policy makers and then come to reality to say, should continue to hold this rate at 300 naira or 420 naira that it is today. So in the last, 25 years, we have had relative level of stability despite the economic recession 2-3 times that we have had governor of central bank. So this is the reason why I sincerely believe that yes, the currency naira is not grossly overvalued to the tune of say 200% or over 200%, but there is need for a big realignment of the exchange rate towards what I call the real exchange rate. When we look at purchasing power parity, we look at comparative analysis of the historical, development of inflation over the last 2-3 years, you will realize that there is need to significantly adjust the value of the naira. Mark you, even the inflation rate that is being bandied today, just 1 second, even the inflation rate that is being bandied today at 10%, that is a managed figure. The real inflation is probably, will anybody tell me that the increased by just 19% when 6 months ago we were buying 1 liter of diesel at 220 naira, today is over 800 naira per liter.
So if I understand, you are also questioning the current figure in terms of the inflation rate. But we'll talk about that. And you also raise fundamental issues around the need to reconcile these two extremes. Yes, there are challenges, and then there is also imperative. So we'll look at that when we return. In case you're just joining us, the program is Daily Politics, and today we're looking at the region debate on the devaluation of the Naira. And we have economic experts, giving us their perspectives on this very important topic. Talking about Tope Pasua, who is a columnist and economist, has been joining us. He's been talking to us all the way from London. We also have Shuaibu Idris, who is an economist and also talking to us from Lagos. And here in Abuja, also via Skype, we have Abdurrahman Hamisu, who is a researcher and a political economist. So we'll take a break. When we return, we'll be looking at the solution to this very disturbing scenario and how best we can reconcile these extremes in order to move the economy forward. Stay with us. We'll be back shortly.
That's great. It's good to see you.
Thank you very much for staying with us on Daily Politics. And today we're looking at the region debate on the devaluation of the Naira with our guests who join us virtually, Tope Pasua, columnist and economist, and Shuaibu Idris, an economist, and Abdurrahman Hamisu, a researcher and political economist. All of them have been giving us their perspective on this issue. Just before the break, Mr. Shuaibu Idris actually agrees to the fact that there are leakages, and of course, they're looking at the underlying, the issues around the country, talking about corruption, insecurity, and so on, and how politicians, if you like, or people who are benefiting from this, crisis are also utilizing the exchange rate window to move some of these funds. Abdurrahman Hamisu, I would want you to look at, how best we can reconcile these issues. He talked about the genuine need to tinker with the exchange rate, perhaps so that it will have its real value, and then also concern about the underlying predicaments. What would be your take on this?
You see, let us not ourselves. We all know this. Is we are unwilling in the last 3 decades to do the needful, which is block what to the fore. It's not what my brother is talking about, but what is context within which we are operating. Previously, have the resources, the money, and so nobody was bothered. Today, we realize that we are broke, we do not have the money, and we need to do something ordinary. The which is what Mr. Shaibu really captured, is a serious threat to our survival as a nation. But the solution does not lie in the evaluation in order to find a balance, because we'll be looking for this balance since the time General Babangida we've not got. One is to ensure that we improve our product capacity so that, one, we can produce what we eat mostly and import what we do not have. Competition for the competition between our that has been siphoned from government, using dollar to store it as a store of value, because as it is today, you can move around with 50 million naira in your pocket and nobody will know. But with this, in order to move with million naira, so it serves their interest. And these are the people that are at whatever rate, they have no consideration, because the money they are exchanging does not come from any enterprise. If it would be the money to import machineries, to import raw materials, sure, and that what we are earning from the international market from our transactions will be enough, because investor, manufacturer will buy at a very exorbitant in order to because you run them out of business. People don't have anything million out of the economy, and they exchange it and they keep it in their homes and wait for the price of the of dollar to go up, and then they bring it to the market and exchange, and they go back to their homes. It's a problem of the it's us that's supposed to solve this problem. So if we're looking for of the naira, the real value of that lies in our commitment to improve our productive base, to produce more, to export more. And at that point in time, if we are allowing, we are only devaluing because we want more nations to come and buy our cheaper goods so that and more. But as we said earlier, if we continue to devalue simply because we are looking for equilibrium that does not exist because of the distortions, as I've already said, coming from competitors to our manufacturers, taking the brunt, problem on our ends, because what we are devaluing is not naira. We are devaluing the labor, well-being, and health of not only the economy, those yes.
Oh, okay, Mr. Pasua. Part of the, the position of Rwanda is that actually there is this become imperative because of the drop in the global commodity prices. He said the devaluation of the naira, or the further devaluation of the naira, become inevitable. Again, he did talk about the divergence, between the official and the parallel market exchange rate, just like Shaibu Idrisat earlier alluded to, has risen to 6 naira, which also led to decline in the external reserve and what have you. There's also issue around the decline in the external reserve. So looking at these submissions, how do we get out of, because yes, it is obvious that we also have genuine challenges that need to be addressed. So how do we get out of this quagmire?
No, see, before Nigerians all became aware, our analyses are usually a little bit half-baked in this country. You should remember that with the information age, the woke, what they call the woke age, with all people being very, people like me, when I was growing up, I had just a circle of friends. Now see mere 15-year-old children, 18 years old, 10 million followers, and everybody is a superstar, meaning that information gets through easily as well. When a long time ago, not even that long ago, if the market said that was only 2 or 3 naira different from the official, okay. Malam Shaibu has also noticed or said, yes, we also know that and for dollar increase, perhaps as a result of increase in population, but also as a result of the externalization of our views. Everybody is now even more dependent on imports than they were. You go to every market in Nigeria, you you see that all what our people are stocking is foreign goods. We have that, except we adopt a shock therapy to ensure that we produce that we need in our own country. So all of that is totally dependent on export, on import. We all the quite work as much as it should. And let me put import and export profile of Nigeria. Our imports, okay, first 14, 15 imports are in the billions of dollars, okay? Talking of technology is our biggest export. We bring in about 35 billion Naira worth of technology. Your phone, your studio, your phone, your laptop, your palm top, your iPad, use very software. And then you also have refined petroleum and diesel and all of that, and all that we bring in every year. Also in the billions, about 20 billion to 30 billion dollars worth every year. And of course, you even have other things like ordinary food, wheat, the wheat used for bread. Import an average of $1 billion worth of wheat. Okay, not to talk of fish. Things like we bought $1 billion worth each. Now, but when you look at the export side, we have only one export that is in the billions, and that is our crude oil. After that, the next big export we have is things like seed oil, sesame that you get in the north of Nigeria, sorghum, she bought, it's about 400 billion. Cocoa is about $350 billion. Can boost the export, everything you have, and also increase your economic complexity, meaning that you have to add to all of those things that you send out as export. Otherwise, you will never balance. That is where we find ourselves. So whereas that problem is there, but the point is say that, look, maybe official should have been a threat. And if you want to have a black market or an official market, that would be 110. But with our own mouths and our own shenanigans, we have ruined ourselves to the point where we are. And of course, that's what Dr. Abdurrahman said also. That, look, we are devaluing the people of this country. And be decked to revalue. Since we started devaluing in 1986, we only devalued. Not only we, every weak African country has only devalued. Weak African country has only depended more on importation. Those Washington consensus guys who advised us, including the ministers that they usually post here, who are from IMF and World Bank and Goldman, have only taken us in one direction. We have become more than the things that we need to do, we haven't done. We have our country, we have only one country, and we that must stand up to defend this country and influence economic policy in a way that will stop complaining, forever. That's the point.
Okay, Mr. Shawedris, looking at local solutions to our problem, not just relying on those pushing the neoliberal policies on us, whether they are working or not. And of course, the need to look at our priorities, the need to go back to production. And we all know that without, the basics, you can never have a productive country. Today, we are battling with energy, talking about power in the first place. The environment is not conducive, issues of around insecurity and so on and so forth. And then how do we focus on those export bills, that we've had from PASUA, those that are giving us comparative advantage? How do we boost this so that we can at least create value for our Naira?
Dr. Tokpe has given more answer to your question even before you ask the question. A country that has been blessed by God with crude oil, reserve, and yet spending $25 billion to import crude, is a paradox. We are clearly, I'm sorry to use the phrase, a bunch of unserious people. You have a country that has so much arable land where we can, rear animal, goats, sheep, cows, and what have you. So this we are spending dollars annually to shorten this import list and be home self-sufficient. Once, for example, we are able to get our refineries on track, by the end of the year, early next year, our dear brother and proportion of foreign exchange will be saved. Now, these are the kind of steps that governments need to take, have the courage and the discipline to implement to the letter.
Okay.
A net importer of cement,
Right.
despite the abundance of limestone that God has given us into this country. President Obasanjo took a position and said, in the next 15 years, we must be exporting cement. Where are we today? We are net exporters of cement. Why can't we do for sugarcane, for example? Can't we do for, the grains that Dr. Tokwe mentioned, wheat? Why can't we, for example, in the last 30 years, 40 years, given what is called export expansion grant to export, we are giving export expansion grant to export of shea butter, sesame seed, cashew nut. What have they been doing with those export expansion grants, which is free that the government has been given to these people? They have not set up processing industry in Nigeria so that we create employment, add value, and export process agricultural produce. What we have been exporting is just raw produce. Now, unless otherwise we look at the two sides of the divide. One side is the area where we are consuming and we are spending so much to import. We need to make sure that we reduce those items. And then the other side of the divide is the area where we are earning this income.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Tokwe Pasua, for those perspectives on this raging debate around the devaluation of the Naira. We appreciate your perspectives. We also thank Legislator Idris Mikati, an economist also, who has been giving us his thoughts and perspectives on this topic. And also to Abdurrahman Hamisu, who is a researcher and a political economist with the University of Abuja here in the nation's capital. We all appreciate you and your thoughts on the platform this evening. On behalf of the guests and the technical crew, this is where we come to the end of this conversation. Do join us tomorrow, where we'll be back with another topic and personalities. Until then, enjoy the rest of your day.